Results live Christian business coach. And let me just paint you a scenario here. You are in a sales call. You guys are connecting really well. They're really excited about your product or service. And then you get to the end and you say, great, are you ready to get started, right? Or we assume the sell and we say, let's get you started. And then the objections come. And that's, maybe the time or the money or the spouse objections. I want you to ask yourself in this exact moment, how do you feel about objections? Some people get super excited about them because it's like, ooh, it's a challenge and I love to be able to overcome those obstacles that might be holding me back. And some people are like, oh no, like the first thing that they say, I'm out, like we're done. I don't want to push them. I don't want to seem salesy or mean or anything like that, right? But there's got to be a better way to handle objections. And today I'm going to talk about what really works to overcome objections. And of course, it's found in the Bible. So if you don't already know me, like I said, I'm a Christian business coach, and I love to be able to teach biblical business strategy. And that's what we're going to learn here today. But the thing is that we need to be able to overcome that fear that we have around objections. And a lot of times fear is overcome by having a strategy, which is exactly what you're going to have here today, and also by focusing on something bigger than that fear. And you're going to learn that key here in just a second. Okay. So, do you find that your objections actually mirror your own objections? So the objections that you're hearing, do they mirror your own objections? It's really interesting. I want you to think about the last few objections that you've gotten. And objections are just part of sales, guys. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. It doesn't mean that you're not doing anything wrong or, that you're not doing anything right? And so just think about those last few objections, because as we understand our objections a little bit more, then we're able to have more power, right? And more ability to better serve the other person. And guys, if you're watching this live, I want you to put a 1 or say hi. And if you're watching it as a replay, #replay or number 2, just so we know who is on here today. And so we can give you that customized support that you need. So objections, like I said, they don't have to be a bad thing. It's just more information. It's just kind of that screening to be able to get to that person of understanding why they really need your product or service. And we're going to talk about ways to kind of build that into your presentation so that you don't have so many at the end, and how to really handle those objections in a really great way. But I want you to check your mindset first. If you feel like those are the things that you're just trying to avoid like crazy, I want you to look at it in a different light this time. And honestly, it's just natural for someone to say, oh, I'm just looking, right? Or I'm not ready to buy because I've got this other thing, right? You think about going into some kind of retail store, and when somebody comes up to you and they say, hey, can I help you with anything? What is the first thing out of your mouth? Oh, I'm just looking. And that can happen even in a sales presentation. And sometimes that I'm just looking concept comes in the form of objections. So get over it. There's nothing wrong with objections. Just get used to it. And in fact, there's a scripture that talks about how trials are a normal part of our everyday life. Well, think about objections as just being a normal part of our sales process. And most of the time, they're not actually ready to buy when they're on the phone with you. Most of the time, people are not ready to buy the very first time that they see an offer. And that's okay. That's absolutely okay. But what we don't want to have them do is to kind of get off that line too easy. We want to push them just a little bit, because we are helping them to be able to help them in a better, bigger way. So that's all that your product or service is helping them in a better, bigger way. So I hope you're starting to see a little bit of a mindset shift around objections. It's just more opportunity to help them see how amazing your product or service can be specifically for them. Sometimes our sales presentations are a little bit general, and of course we want them to be really specific, but this will help them to see it for themselves in the way that they have concerns around it. So let's talk about these objections here. So a lot of times it's the spouse. I have to talk to the spouse. I don't have enough time for something like this, or I don't have money, or I need to think about it, all those types of things. So when you hear those types of objections, do you get that fear in your heart, like, oh crap, I'm losing the sale, right? I once knew this person that in their mind, every single time that they were pitching their product or service, it was like, they're going to sign up, they're going to buy, they're going to sign up, they're going to buy, right? And he would like amp himself up for it and get really excited about it. But then that objection comes, and then sometimes we just crash and we're like, oh crap, that didn't happen, right? But I want to go to the scriptures here because the key to overcoming objections is one word, guys. One word. So let's figure out what that is. So the scripture that we're going to go to is in 1 John 4:18. And it says, there is no fear in love, but perfect love casteth out fear, because fear hath torment. He that feareth is not made perfect in love. So the one word to help you overcome any objection is love. Isn't that interesting? Because a lot of times when you hear objections, if you were a third party person and you were watching a sales interaction, and a lot of times what happens is that you have the person who's selling on this side and the person who they want to buy on this side. And when that objection comes, they start clashing like this, right? It's like, man, when I was in another company, somebody told me that you needed to say this when somebody said you don't have enough money, right? It was basically, this person says over here, I don't have the money for that product or service, right? And then the salesperson says something like, well, if you don't have the money now, when are you ever going to have the money? Oh, I am too much of a yellow-hearted person to be able to handle that. And guys, I'm very, and we talked a little bit in the Faithful Ladypreneurs group about colors. I'm very red and yellow, which is totally opposite. And so that's a very red kind of personality way to handle things. But the thing is that it puts you at odds with the person that you're talking to. And you never want to be at odds with the person that you're talking to. In fact, a lot of times that bolsterous, that kind of almost cocky feeling comes from fear. They're afraid they're going to lose the sale. And so they feel like they have to be in this combative mode to get to force them to do it. And I think we've all had those sales experiences. And we can tell you horror stories about people who have tried to force you into a sale, and it never works. It never works. But what does work is love. And what that looks like is instead of this person over here is trying to get this person and convince this person over here to buy, if you come alongside that person and you work together to figure out how to best serve that person, that is love. And now this concept of perfect love, that only can come from the Lord. And so when we are including the Lord in these sales conversations, then we can have as close to perfect love as possible, right? But the idea is that love is going to help us to come alongside that person instead of fight them. Think about a conversation that you've had, whether that was maybe what you did or if someone else was trying to sell you on something and it became this combative situation. What would have needed to happen in order for it to turn from fear and from that friction into love? And I can tell you guys that putting on your coach hat, regardless of if you're in the coaching industry or not, is one way to be able to do that. So let's really implement this here into the strategy. So it's how can we help you to achieve this? And you can do this with any kind of objection that you have. So let's take your spouse, for example. So they say, this is great, I love it, but I need to talk to my husband first, right? Which is great. I talk to my husband about every single purchase that I do just because that's how we are. And so I'm the type of person to give that objection. But the thing is instead of saying, thanks so much for joining today. Instead of saying well, why do you need to talk to your husband? Can't you make decisions without your husband? oh man, it just breaks my soul when I hear things like that, is that we can come alongside them and we can say, awesome, I know how excited you are about this product or service, and I know how much of a difference this is going to make in X, right? Your goals. So what I want to do is I want to have a 3-way call with your husband, if you're open to that, to be able to talk them through exactly what I shared with you, because it's kind of like watching a movie and then telling a friend about it, right? Is that it's like this amazing, awesome movie, and you can't put it into words unless you're actually there. And so that's what we want to do. Or same thing with like vacations, right? Is that it's one thing to be able to go on that vacation, and then it's another thing to show the pictures from that vacation, right? And so if you can help them understand that you are the key to helping them get what they want, even with their husband, then you can prep for that. And you can say, okay, so just let me know, what kind of objections do you feel like your husband might have, or questions that he might have. Set up that 3-way call is absolutely going to be the best way to handle that spouse objection. And it can be a little scary and intimidating sometimes, but you've got this because you know your product, you know your service, and you know that you're really coming from a place of love, of just trying to help that prospect that you were just talking to achieve what they want to achieve. And they're already bought in if they're ready to have the spouse come on the line. So you're good to go. Now, if they are maybe like, oh no, my husband wouldn't go for that, right? Then the next best thing that you can do is prep them for that conversation with their husband. Pull out the most important parts and best parts of the movie, right? So that they can explain that from a really awesome light, and you can help to kind of control that environment a little bit. So you can ask questions, put on your coach hat, right? Which is all about asking great questions for them to be able to identify solutions for themselves. That's the secret of coaching, and including God every step of the way. And so the thing is that you want to ask them, what is it that about this program or this package or this service or whatever it is that gets you most excited? And what's that going to do for you? Really get them to feel those emotions so that they can take that to their husband as soon as possible, right? Like we want them to have that conversation right away because we want them to feel those emotions and keep those emotions, but also to be able to have them say the right things. This is what I'm most excited about, and this is what I feel like it's going to do for me. And, talk about the spouse's objection too. And I know that you have these types of concerns, but here's what I think that we can do about those types of concerns. Coach them through that conversation. You don't want them to just go over and say, there's this really awesome thing and I want it, and it's like $5,000 and I want to get it and it's going to be cool. No, we want to have them almost have a script, or at least questions that they can that you're asking them for them to think about to be able to bring to their spouse. So do you see how that's coming from a love kind of standpoint as opposed to that fear or that aggressiveness that sometimes sales has a bad rep for? It's not that combative situation of like, well, why do you have to talk to your spouse? You're never going to get anywhere if you're that kind of person. And I don't think the ladies in this group are that kind of person, but maybe you're missing some of those pieces to be able to come from that place of love, but still guide them. Because sometimes I think that we think if we come from a place of love that we're just not going to push them. But pushing them can help them to see how they do that thing in other parts of their life as well. In fact, I was just talking to a client the other day who she's just such an incredible example of this, that the person wanted to get out of their contract with them because they had some medical bills or something else come up. And they decided to push them just a little bit because they're acting like that in other parts of their life. And that's what a good coach does. So I know that some of you guys are not coaches, but I want you to put your coach hat on, because coaching them through a situation as opposed to taking their excuses is really going to best serve that person that you're talking to, whether you get the sale or not. Pretty amazing, right? I want you guys to put in the comments what you guys are thinking about this concept of love over aggressiveness, of love over fear. Okay, so we talked about spouse. Let's talk about that time objection. And before we do, I want you guys to get in the habit of getting all of your objections out at once. Have them tell you all of the objections. Now, when I first heard this concept, I was like, okay, that's kind of strange, right? Usually we hear an objection and then we're like, oh, yeah, but it's because of this, this, and this, and it's totally fine, right? And we want to address each one of them. But as we've seen over and over and over again with examples of Jesus Christ in the Bible, that he leads people. People want to be led by someone that they want to follow, right? And if they're on a sales call with you, chances are there's a little part of them that wants to follow you. So they want to be led, right? It's like we want to buy, but we don't want to be sold to. So lead, that's our job as salespeople and as leaders to be able to lead. And so the thing is that we want to make sure we stay in control of that conversation and lead them in the best way possible. So the reason why you get all the objections up front, so you say, I need to talk to my spouse. And then you say, awesome, outside of, talking to your spouse, is there anything else that you feel like would hold you back from making this commitment today or from getting this program or package, right? And then they say, well, I'm really concerned about time. And then you'd be like, okay, no problem. We'll talk about that here in just a second. But is there anything else that could, hold you back from, really committing to this? And then they say, well, it's also about the money as well, right? See, and if you just help them to get those objections out, one, it's almost like a cathartic thing, like that they can get those things out so that they're not festering. And you're not going to have to tackle every single one of them on every single follow-up call that you have. Have you guys ever had that experience where it's like you're tackling an objection on every single follow-up call? Get them all out on the table. In fact, I used to sell rainbow vacuums with my dad. And this is so funny. I was like 16, so I was just barely old enough to sell rainbow vacuums. And the vacuum was so heavy, I couldn't get it out of the car because I'm a very petite person, right? And so I had to actually go knock on the person's door, have them get the vacuum out of the car and bring it in for me. I think sometimes I got pity sales or something, but they kept the vacuum because they loved it. But anyway, what my dad would do, and this is really interesting around the psychology, is that he would get them at the end of the presentation and he would say, okay, sounds like you love it because of this, this, and this, and he'd tie it back to their needs. And we're actually going to talk about that at our masterclass tonight. So I hope you guys are going to join us. And if you want information about the masterclass, go ahead and type in masterclass below. But he would tie those back to their needs. And then he would say, awesome. He would do this objections thing, and I didn't even realize it until I took a class and I was like, oh, wow, that's exactly what he did, is that he would say, okay, so outside of, money, is there anything else that that you feel like would hold you back from making this investment in your home today? And they'd be like, nope, we're good. It's just the money. That's just the only concern that we have. And he would literally shake their hand, like, when we were able to meet in person, because we did these rainbow demonstrations in their home. He would shake their hand and he would say, thanks so much. I'm super excited for you to be able to get this vacuum. Let me see what I can do about the price. And then he would call the back office and, that kind of thing and see what he could work out for them. But it was such an interesting concept of let's get out all of your objections, and then I think we can go ahead and overcome that. Let's work together to overcome that. That's what I want you guys to think about. That's where the love comes in, is that it's not going to do any good to just give up on your prospect at that first objection that you get, because most of the time they're smoke screens. They want to see how much you're going to help them. And especially if you're a coach, they want to see how good you are at coaching them, whether it's conscious or unconscious. And so we talked about the spouse objection. Let's talk about the time objection. And when we go through these objections and we get them all out on the table, we're going to go through the ones that are like the scariest ones we're going to leave for last, right? Those big ones like money and time. Spouse can be something that's pretty quick and simple to kind of address. But the time and money ones, like whatever you feel like is the biggest ones for them, leave that to the end, because you are subconsciously going to teach them, here's the psychology of sales here, that these objections are no big deal, right? If they they say, well, I'm worried about, maybe you have a class that is on Thursday nights and they are concerned that they can't attend the class. Then you can say something like, well, all of our classes are recorded and we're actually opening up another one on Friday night too. No big deal. Check. It's totally fine. I can help you overcome those concerns that you have. It's just that psychology that's there. And there's so much psychology around sales, guys. It just amps me up. So let's talk about that time piece. So if they're concerned about adding one more thing to their plate, once again, in order to show that love to them and really serve them, put on your coach hat. That's the key, is love and put on your coach hat. And that is going to help you overcome any objection. So you can say something like, well, do you mind if we do a quick time audit? And you can go through their day and say, okay, where do you feel like you have some time to fit in this online course or to, whatever that may be, and work together with them. There's always a solution. And honestly, as a Christian business coach, sometimes I will actually pray with them right on the line. Now that's up to you on whether or not you want to do that, but not for me to get the sale. It's for them to be able to see a better way. Right? What's another way that we can look at this? Because sometimes we get so trapped in one way of looking at it that we need to help them to open up their view of what's possible and how they can do that. And if you can start helping them to see how they can overcome objections around this sale, you can help them overcome objections in other areas of their life too, or blocks that they're having. You are so welcome. Thanks so much for joining. I love that comment. Okay, so we talked about the time of that's where you're going to start kind of going through. And this is, like I said, this is you're coming alongside them and you're saying, awesome, let's brainstorm some ways that we can make this work, right? And if it's not doable, then it's not doable. And there's no pressure because we're coming from that place of love. Now let's tackle the money one. And the money one is so interesting because most of the time when it comes to a money objection, it's not about the money. Now, there are times where there are, right? And the thing that I want you guys to get is that if this is going to put them in a bad financial situation, let's say that your course to work with you is $5,000, right? And that if they spend that $5,000 and put it on a credit card or whatever that is, or they physically, literally do not have the money to work with you, or it's going to hurt their family situation, be ready to have that frank conversation with them. But a lot of times when it comes to a money objection, the thing that they're really fearing are a couple of different things that they have the fear around. Are you the right person to help me get there? Is this the right program or package for me to be able to actually get the results that I want? Because maybe they have in their head playing all of those coaches or all of those programs or all of those products that they've bought that don't solve the problem that they actually have. They're probably replaying that in their head. And guys, the last one is so important. And that is, can I do that? As the buyer, I am thinking, wow, I believe in her. I believe in her product or her service. But do I have the ability to get the success I'm looking for? Because I believe in them, but not myself. And there's also that fear of making that investment because we come from this world, I think especially in the Christian community, especially, is that, it's best to be frugal and investments are bad. And sometimes we have to coach them through the fact that investments in your business or investments in your health or whatever your industry is can actually make a huge difference. And so that's where we need to get to the root. If you have a money problem, double check to see if it's really money. Because here's the most important thing that blew my mind when it came to a money objection when I first got started in business. Let's say that your all-time favorite dream car is a Ferrari. Red, gorgeous, sleek, brand new Ferrari, right? And if I came to your house and I dropped that Ferrari in your driveway and I said, it's yours for $5,000, what would you do to get that Ferrari? You'd have that money like that because of the value, the perceived value of the Ferrari. Well, guys, That's what we need to do with our product or service. We need to make our product or service so irresistible, so Ferrari-like to them that it's a no-brainer to make that investment. Now, if you are a homeless person and I drop a Ferrari in your, in front of you on the strip of your homelessness, that sounds so bad. And you literally do not have any money whatsoever because you don't even have a home to live in, then you're not going to be able to find the money. Or, I think you still might actually, but because you could sell that afterwards. But the thing is that you want to really double check. Is it that I'm not building up the value enough? Is it that I'm not helping them to believe in themselves enough? Because those are the smoke screens that a lot of times accompany money. But the actual money part is that sometimes you need to come alongside them and say, here is a credit card that you could apply for. Or do you have a family member that they can help you invest in your business or yourself or your health or whatever that may be, right? Do you have something that you can sell? And if you come alongside them and you brainstorm with them, and they have to really want it. Sometimes I ask my prospects, I say, on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is like, you don't want this at all, you're done, right? And 10 is, I want this more than I want to breathe. Then where are you at? And if they're not above like an 8, then I don't go with this direction, right? They have to really, really want it. And if they really, really want it, I believe that we can always make something work. We can always find a solution. I say, if you want to work with me and I want to work with you, then let's put our heads together and figure out how we can make this work so that you can have this result that you're looking for. Super, super powerful. Get your coaching hat on so that you can come from a place of love to be able to best serve them. And so we covered spouse, we covered time, we covered money, and the need to think about it kind of concept is really that we haven't built enough value. We haven't answered their questions yet. We haven't helped them to see how this can really best serve them. And so make sure that you're really being aware of what these objections are telling you. And like I said, remember that they're questioning your product or service. They're questioning you, and they're questioning themselves more than anything. Can I really make this work for me? And so we want to build those in to our sales presentation. And when we do, we're going to have massive success. Remember that scripture, our biblical success principle of 1 John 4:18. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts fear. Casteth out fear. And that's so important because as we are just coming from a place of love, we're praying before the sales call and asking God to help us serve that person in whatever way is best for them, then we know that we can come alongside that person and try to figure out a way to help them achieve it, because God loves to create win-win scenarios. And that is exactly what sales is. So thanks so much for watching here today. I hope that you have been able to really think about objections in sales in a completely different light, and that you are coming at it from a place of love and support, and now you have the tools to be able to do so. And if you want to take your sales to the next level, we have an incredible workshop coming up, as you guys all know. May 31st to June 9th is 10 free days of amazing content to help you go from not knowing this person at all on social media to be able to help them see the value of even getting on a sales call with you. And we're even going to give you the bridge that you need to create to have an incredible sales conversation. So don't miss it. Make sure that you go to divinelydrivenresults.com. At the top, it'll talk about a workshop. Get registered today because you are going to receive an incredible workbook that you can use over and over and over again in your business. This is going to help you increase your leads organically, increase your sales, and increase your connection with God, because we're going to have biblical business strategy the whole way through. Thanks for joining, guys. We will see you next time on Divinely Driven Results.